All right, good morning. I'm telling you, man, I am ready to go. We're going to shut the corn today. I've been off the stage for a little while here, and I'm excited to be back. But I got to say, Dusty and Frank, you guys have done a great job. Dusty's coming back next week to close out this series, and I'm just grateful. You've just done a great job, man. If you haven't been here, maybe this is your first time and you're like, okay, what's with all this stuff? Let me just explain a couple things. Number one, we don't normally set up this way. And we did it for a reason. And I'll explain that in a minute. But normally you can come and just be anonymous next to somebody, not have to stare at somebody you don't know. Number two, we're in the middle of a series called Unfulfilled. And the whole premise of this is that too often people, including myself, at different stages are walking through life and we're unsatisfied with the place we're at. We're unhappy. We're just flat out unfulfilled. And there comes a time where you just need to say, I'm done with that. I'm going to be done with the and we're going to get rid of it so that we can actually live that fulfilled life, that joyful life, that happy life, whatever it is that you're looking for. And one of the ways we can do that is by finding how our unique shape, the way that God's designed us specifically, how it can benefit both the church and the community. And so we're doing that by going through this acrostic called SHAPE. And I'll just tell you what they are just as a review for some of you who maybe haven't heard it before. But the S in SHAPE is for, well, actually, I'll ask you, we'll quiz you, since we're kind of, schoolish here. What is the S for? Spiritual gifts. And I noticed you don't want to say it too loud because there's people sitting next to you and they might think that you're weird for talking too loud. And that's okay. Spiritual gifts, because God gives each one of us, when we become a believer, when we become somebody who's a follower of Jesus Christ, He gives each one of us special gifts. They're called spiritual gifts. That you may have an ability similar to this, like leadership is a spiritual gift. And you might be able to lead, but unless you know Jesus Christ and He's given you that gift, you're going to exercise it on a completely different plane than somebody who's been blessed by God with that gift. And H is for what? Heart. That's good. Whoever said that loud, that was wonderful. And a lot of us have passions. If I asked you about, let's just even say, a football team, and I started listing them off, when I got to your football team, you'd be like, yeah! But when I got to somebody else's, you'd be like, we won't say those things in church. And that's because you have a passion about it. Well, it works the same way in serving the body, serving the community, and serving the church. We have passions about things. Some people love working with kids, and if that's not your passion, that's not your heart, stay away from our kids. But if you like them, go work there. If you like music like these guys, you can tell, can't you? You can tell that these guys like music. And it comes out in the way that they play and they sing. And so we want to use our passions and our spiritual gifts together. We also want to use our abilities. I didn't ask you. But A is for our abilities. And Dusty talked about that last week when he used his Easy Bake Oven to make some what were they, cupcakes? And they were great, Dusty. You have a wonderful ability. Those cupcakes were delicious. And then today we're talking about P. Does anybody know what P stands for? That's good. You can read. I'm proud of you. And so let me get back to why you're sitting at tables. Some of you, when you walked in here today, you looked and you saw that and you went, oh my word. No. I don't know these people. Where are my friends? I need to find my friends. Friends. Let me sit out here with my friends. Because if somebody sat you down, maybe you showed up a little late and you think your friends were already seated. Because it's just not the thing. Your personality is a little more what they might call introverted. Some of you walked in here and you went, woo! Tables! This is great! I'm going to start here and then I'm going to move over there and then I'm going to, hey, I'm sitting for a while. You're just like a little bit what they might call what? Extrovert or hyper. Yeah, that's a personality trait too. Okay? But even just your reaction coming in here demonstrates a little bit about what your personality might be like. And some of you, I've got kids, like 5 of them, so we got all kinds of toys in my house, and we've got one that's this huge puzzle. It's like 3 feet big, okay? It's got all these shapes in it. That's a weird one. That's odd, isn't it? And then there's, I don't know if these go together. Let's try. No. Maybe. No. Do they look like they go together out there? Okay, well, they don't go together. But here's the deal. Your personality, when it comes to our shape, your personality, you can fill this in if you're taking notes and following along with us. Your personality is like the edge of your shape. Your personality is like the edge of your shape. You can tell immediately what kind of shape this is just by looking at it, by hanging, just spending a little bit of time with it. You don't know necessarily where it goes. You got to see how the lines fit and how, where it fits in the puzzle and all that kind of stuff. You know what it's like just by looking at the edge. And a lot of times, you go hang out with people, and maybe even the people at your table, and you can describe them. Some of them have really rough edges. You're like, you've got a little edge about it. Okay, that's a personality trait. Some of them have really smooth edges. What's that? It's a personality trait. I mean, look at this one. We only got a couple of them. That's a smooth edge. These are thick, this one. Really funny, but I appreciate this courtesy line. It's really good. But when we think about our personality, I want you to think about this. Your personality is like the edge of your shape. It's something that people can immediately recognize. You can tell what this is looking this way or looking this way. It doesn't matter what side you're coming from. And so when you're hanging out with people, or let me put it this way, when people are hanging out with you, what do they say about you? How would they describe you? What would they think about who you are? Because it's the first thing that comes out is your personality. Not how smart you are, not what your passions are, not your spiritual gifts, not your abilities, not even your experiences. It's your personality when you're just making small talk. And we're going to be in a couple different places today in the Bible. If you've got it, you can open it. You've heard this verse before. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 16. It's verse 7. It's actually the second part of verse 7. But let me set the stage for you. We've heard this a million times, and I haven't really thought of it this way, like we're going to talk about today. But David, little brother of, little son actually of Jesse, and brother of all his bigger brothers, he's stuck tending sheep. Samuel comes out and wants to find who's going to be king, and he's hanging out with dad and everything. He's like, checking out, nope, that's not the one, that's not the one. And here's all these older, good-looking sons and everything. And God tells Samuel, don't consider his height or his appearance or anything like that. And then he says this right here. He says, the Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And that's great. I mean, don't you like that? I mean, you might be ugly. You might have an edge about you in your personality. You might be one of those people who's just introverted and feel like you can't do anything because, well, the only people that you ever see at church are the ones that are up on stage, and they must have an extroverted kind of personality, so I don't really count for anything. That's not true for a second. Aren't you glad that God looks at the heart and he understands where you're coming from, what your attitude is? But I want you to get the other side, the flip side of the same coin. What does man look at? Man looks at the outward appearance. And so your personality does matter, and it's going to help determine a few things, which we'll look at in a minute. And God looks at the heart, but we do look at the outward appearance. Now, we've got a number of people here that are going on taking some mission trips this summer. And there's some that are going to Daytona Beach, and we've talked about them. You guys have given, I don't know, at last count it was $600 and some odd dollars, just towards them that are going. I know some others that are going to Kenya. We've got another one who's going to be going to an area of New York to work with international students, and he does our videos. And so I asked him, hey, would you just put together a little bit of video? And you're going to get an opportunity because you'll be able to figure this out. What is his personality like? Just by watching this 1.5-minute long video. So go ahead and play that.
When I walked into an international studies class last year, I never thought that I would be able to connect and communicate with international students via video conferencing. We were so different. We came from different cultures. I was a boy from the South supposed to connect with a Muslim girl in Algeria. During the class, I discovered part of my personality connected with international students. We connected with each other and talked and discussed topics, even outside of class. One of my favorite parts of the class was when my Muslim partner asked me why I was so happy. It was absolutely amazing getting to discuss my relationship with Christ and how He was the source of my joy. I was able to share the love of Christ because my personality made a connection. It is amazing how God can use us. 1 Corinthians 12:6 says that God works through different people in different ways, but it is the same God who achieves his purpose through them all. I would have never guessed that a year ago God would be working through me to minister to international students. Now I'm about to spend my summer in New York City on Campus Crusade's Tribeca project, connecting and sharing Christ's love with international students from all over the world. So much has happened in this past year just because I allowed God to use my gifts and personality for his will.
For greater things have yet to come, and greater things are still to be done in this city.
I want you to think for a second. If God called you to go to New York City, some of you would be like that old El Paso commercial and say, get a rope. Others of you would be like, yeah, let's go. And Brad is the kind of guy who says, yeah, let's go. And it's because he's actually had an opportunity to see some of these international students and interact with them. And just watching that, I'm guessing you guys probably have formed an opinion about Brad. And that's okay, because he's talking. And so you get an opportunity to see that outside edge of what his shape looks like and his personality. And some of you, when we've done baptism videos and stuff like that before, you're totally freaked out because people are going to actually see your personality. You don't like doing that kind of stuff. You have to talk in front of the camera. Oh, my word. It's because man looks at the outward appearance. The good news is that God looks at the heart. And so we're going to talk about personality. Let me just explain it as best I can understand. And I'll tell you this. I had the worst, absolute worst time. You know, I had like 3 weeks off. I've been thinking about this thing for 4 weeks, trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to explain this? You know, what does the Bible have to say? Where's a good story that explains personality? And there isn't one. There's no good verse that says, you know, this kind of personality is better, or that personality is better, or that everybody has a personality. There isn't one that really even talks about that. You can look at different characters. You can look at Peter. He's a guy in the Bible, and you can kind of understand what kind of personality he had. He's like a go-getter, like jump in, get myself in trouble, and then say I'm sorry later. I've got kids like that. We've got other people like Paul who are a little more thoughtful and kind of work their way through strategically, but they're very committed. I mean, we'll talk about Mary and Martha in a little bit, but there's really no spot that talks about personality, so as best as I can decide or discern, here's what we've got about personality. Fill in this blank. Personality may, I can't say is, it may be God-defined. It may be God-defined. We don't know. It just may be. I don't know. Okay? When we say that we are uniquely made, you've heard the argument before about the difference between nature and nurture. Are we a product of our environment, or did we come into this world this way? Is your personality the way it is because of the home that you were raised in, the experiences that you've had, or anything like that? Yes. Is your personality the way it is because that's the way you were born, and you're just uniquely different? Yes. How does that work? I don't know. And so, personality may be defined by God. It may be something that God has given you, because some people, they're extroverts. I mean, they walked out meeting the doctor. Hey, doc, good to see you. I'm glad I'm out of that room finally. Other ones, that's why they were screaming the whole time, put me back. Okay, I don't know, but I do know that it may be defined by God. So I can't say that it is for sure, but here's the second part. I want you to fill this in. Whether it is or isn't, we can either develop or distort it. We can either develop or distort it. Let me just give you an example of this. Take your pen. I want you on the bottom of that page right there. I want you to sign your name. Everybody, do this real quick. I'm not collecting these afterwards. It's not so I can find out who doodles or anything, but just write your name on the bottom of your sheet. Good. Now, take your pen, put it in the other hand. Write your name. And you do it. See, I thought about this for a minute. You've heard of people who have lost arms or legs or stuff like that when they had the ability, maybe even a really good ability, to use their hands and feet and all that. But they've adapted. So maybe you're right-handed, but your hand's in a cast and it was broken or something, and it's going to be that way for 8, 10, 12 weeks. What do? You learn to write with your left. And there's some people who Wash both hands. You ever heard of people who paint with their feet? There's a woman I saw on TV one time, she takes care of her children with her feet. I'd say she developed something. Is that her personality? I just wanted to illustrate something, though, that your personality, whether you're somebody who is outgoing or you're somebody who's a complete introvert and just, you're almost petrified of people, your personality, whether it's given by God or not, it can be developed in a good way or it can be distorted. Let's say you're outgoing. You can develop that in a positive way where you can go in a room you've never met a stranger and you can make people feel at ease and you're the one who can kind of make sure that people are included and involved because you don't have a problem with that. But you can also distort that and do it in a bad way where you become obnoxious. You need to be the center of attention. You are the one that everybody needs to pay attention to because you don't have a problem with that. And let's go on the other side. Maybe you're an introvert, and that's okay. You don't have to be the one who's out in front. You can work in the back. You can find people that are maybe on the edge and just kind of move closer. You don't even have to say anything to them. You're comfortable doing that. Or you can be completely withdrawn and removed from what happens in life. And spend your time at your house and never venture out anywhere else. You can develop it in a positive way or you can distort it in a negative way. But your personality is something that you're going to have to develop. And we're talking about this because when we talk about, at the beginning of the year, what we're talking about is our series. As our theme for the entire year, we're talking about I Like and how in life, Christ needs to become bigger in our life, and we must become smaller. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about what you're comfortable with. And some of you, if you're in an outlet, first of all, thank you. I'm proud of you. Good job for being in an outlet or a small group. As a matter of fact, I know one small group, they were helping people in their group move this past weekend. Apparently, it took them like 15 trips. That's an inside joke. Actually, it's all inside now, which is even funnier. Sorry. And then there was another group that had a progressive dinner, so they went from one house to another house and just cleared out the cabinets and ate everything like a flock of locusts. Is it a flock? Swarm. But what we do with these outlets is when you came in, you met some people out there. Some people were out shaking hands, saying good morning. Some people were filling out name tags. Some people were making sure if you were a first-time guest with us that you know where your kids go or something like that. And that's because they're part of an outlet, and that's how we do it. And some of you, if you're in an outlet, it's going to come your turn. And you might not be one of those, I want to meet people kind of person, but you need to develop that. You need to develop that. You don't have to be the one out front being the first line of defense, but you're going to have to develop it. Why? Because he must become greater. I must become less. It's not about me. When you guys come here on Sunday mornings, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about Jesus Christ and what he wants to do in your life and through your life. He wants to take your edges, and he wants to help define your shape. You'll work on developing it. So that's why we're talking about it. So here's some questions for you when it comes to your personality. I want you to think for a second. What is your personality? Are you happy-go-lucky? Are you depressed? When people see you, are they attracted to you, or are they kind of repelled? Are you a funny person? Or are you just kind of a sit in the back and not say anything? And I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong about any of those. Just think about what kind of person are you? Here's what we got to answer. Before we do, we've had this problem with this Attila the Un, a little character that we kind of created who was birthed out of a really bad day that some little kid had where he was made fun of. And so now he's growing up and he wants to ruin everybody's life. And instead of having them be happy, he wants them to be unhappy. Instead of them to be satisfied and fulfilled, he wants them to be unfulfilled. And he wants to do something with your personality too. So I had an encounter with him. You can watch and see what happened.
Hey, I so appreciate you letting me come over because I'm really having a hard time with this. I'm not feeling like I'm connecting. Like people don't really understand who I am. They don't get my personality, or maybe it's worse than that. Maybe they don't even like it. I mean, when I think about it, I think I've got a good personality. I've got friends. I'm a really friendly kind of guy. As a matter of fact, I think I'm really outgoing. I think that I'm somebody who is approachable. As a matter of fact, I think I'm funny. I think that's one of the things that draws people to me. Like, people want to be around somebody who's happy all the time, who's never upset about stuff. They actually have a good outlook on life. I mean, I love kids. I've been married for 15 years. I love counseling. If people have problems, I don't mind talking to them. But sometimes it seems like nobody wants to pay attention. It's like they can't see me for who I am. It's like they don't understand that I'm different than that. I'm not just some boring, play dead kind of guy. Are you even listening, Marcus?
Some of us, when we get into a crowd, we get around people and we want to maybe make new friends or something like this, and our personality is supposed to come out, we're afraid to do that. We're afraid to let people know what we're really like. And if you're filling out your blanks here, you need to ask yourself, are there any characteristics, are there any personality traits that you have that are unseen? Are there any traits that are unseen? Things that you don't let people know about you because you're frankly afraid of their reaction because you think everybody needs to be the same. I'll give you the next one. Are there any characteristics about your personality that are unsuitable? And what do I mean by that? This is when people distort their personality. Where somebody who's funny, that's just part of their personality, has to be funny all the time. They could be at a funeral and they lean over to somebody and crack a joke. It's unsuitable. Your personality, but that's distorted. So whether or not God's defined your personality, we need to develop it and not distort it. Last one. Are there any characteristics of your personality that are unnecessary? Now, if this is something that God's given you, how in the world could it be unnecessary? Well, that's why, as I was looking through the Bible and trying to see it, you guys, I want you to think back, if you're familiar at all with any biblical stories, think about Peter for a second. Okay? Here's Peter, who went on after Christ resurrected. He was able to help change the world. We're here today in part because of Peter. Because he had that outgoing, let's dive in, let's go personality. He was the first one to step out of the boat when Jesus was walking on water, which makes no sense to me. I think it was a little weird. But instead of saying, what is up with that? Oh my word, and just going crazy, he's like, tell me to come out there. And Jesus does, and he walks out. That's Peter's personality. He's the same one where he finds out that Jesus is supposed to die. He's like, oh, no. And what does Jesus say to him? Get behind me, Satan. When's the last time you called one of your really good friends Satan? It was because Peter's personality was just he was a little too far in front of himself. He's the guy who, when they came to arrest Jesus, they're going to take him, they were going to crucify him. Peter hadn't listened, because that's another part of his personality. He didn't really know what was going on. He just knew somebody was coming to take his friend away. So what did he do? He took out his sword and what? Do you remember this story? Chopped the dude's ear off. Jesus is like, Peter, put away your sword. Come on. That's the kind of guy Peter is. Were any of those actions unnecessary? Yeah. Dude, you really didn't have to cut off his ear. You really didn't need to do that. He took his really passionate, let's deal with this right now. I'm not going to sit and wait for something to happen to me. I'm going to make it happen. He took that part of his personality, and it was distorted. And he learned over time to take care of that. He's also the guy who just kind of tried to blend in on the argument with the Gentiles on whether or not you really needed to become a Jew first. He didn't use his personality. He let his personality use him, and then he used it as an excuse. And I say this mostly when we're talking about people and your personality, the way that you interact with others. Because I understand that there are some times where you just don't want to talk to somebody. You will not answer the phone. You will not look people in the eye. You don't want to have a conversation. And that's not the only personality trait. But when it comes to church, on Sunday morning, I don't want you to be that kind of person. Because if that's the kind of personality that you put off, guess what people who are coming to church are thinking? This is not a very friendly place. You just defined our shape in a negative way. We've got some rough edges, and we won't see people back. Now, when it comes to serving, find some place to serve behind the scenes. There were people here last night that helped set all this up. There are people that are going to stay here today and help tear it all down. there are people that you have never seen that have done things that you have seen. And that's because they don't want the limelight. You can do that. But whatever is going on in your life, whatever personality traits that people have told you before are somewhat offensive, or maybe you just get that sense, if they're unnecessary, get rid of them. If they're unsuitable, stop using them. If they're unseen, people haven't seen the real you, start acting like who you're supposed to be, who God's created and allowed you. I want you to turn your sheet over. I also want you to grab your Bible. I want you to turn to Luke chapter 10. We've heard this story before. The Mary and a Martha. Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 38. Here's what it says. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha, she was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. In just this little section right here, you kind of get a picture of what Mary and Martha are like, don't you? You just read it. I'm going to read it again just so that you're looking at what kind of person they're like. You may have heard things before about it. I want you to just look at this passage. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She's kind of hospitable. She's friendly. She's allowing people in. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. She's relational. She likes people. She doesn't like things. Some might say she's lazy. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She's focused, but she was distracted. And so she came to him and said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. She's a tattletale. Any of you have any of those? Tell her to help me. She doesn't want to do it alone. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Your personality, whatever it is, the way that you relate to other people, the shape that you've got, that you put out, it's going to influence a couple things. 3 things that we're going to talk about. It's going to influence 1, others' perceptions. Jesus had been there, what? A few minutes? He sees one girl making whatever she's making for lunch, and one girl sitting at his feet listening to him. He sees something. And what does he tell her? What did he see in Martha? In verse 41 he says, you are worried and upset. I think Jesus was able to tell that. You're worried and upset. Some of you are constantly frustrated, you're constantly worried, you're constantly upset. You're constantly just flat out down. And you wear it on your sleeve, and people can see, and then you wonder, why don't people talk to me? Why don't I feel like I fit in? Why am I sitting alone? Because you've distorted what God has put in you instead of developing it. And so our personality, as far as other people are concerned, needs to do this. What people see in us, it should reflect well on him. Was Jesus always happy? No, he wasn't. As a matter of fact, Mary and Martha's brother Lazarus died, and Jesus was crying. He got angry. He got upset. I'm sure he got frustrated. Peter! So I am not here to tell you that all Christians are supposed to be happy-go-lucky, smile all the time, and that's what we want you to become. But I am telling you that they're also not depressed, frustrated, angry, distant all the time either. What people see in us should reflect well on Jesus Christ. In Matthew, Jesus had this to say. He said, in the same way, Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And so when you think about what people see in you, how you conduct yourself, what you put on, do people just see you, or do they see Jesus Christ in you? Does it reflect well on Him? So your personality will influence other people's perceptions. It'll do something else, though. It'll influence your placement. Huh? What do you mean by that, your placement? Okay, well, like we've talked, if you're going to work in church, if you're going to serve the body, we've got second Saturday service coming up. We're going to take, I don't know, I think we ordered 1,000, 1,500 flowers. We're going to bundle them up and head to some nursing homes and just hand them out to all the people there, because sometimes they get forgotten when it comes to Mother's Day. And some of you are like, I don't like old people. And you might say that's just your personality. Or when we do other second Saturday service projects where we stand out and just hand things to people, I don't do that. Okay? And you don't have to. You can find other ways to serve. You can serve by getting here early tonight and setting up and being ready for the Lord's Supper. You can find some other capacity. Remember we talked about kids? If you like them, work there. If you don't, stay away from them. Students, same thing. Band, worship, same thing. Life, same thing. If you have a personality that goes with some of these things, do it. It's going to influence where you're placed, where you serve, what you do. Some of you could easily go out and get a job as a car salesman or a used car salesman, which of course has a stereotype associated with it that's based around what? Their personality. If I asked you to describe to me what Napoleon Dynamite was like, you'd do it based on his personality. Not what he did. His personality is what made the whole movie. I mean, think about it. Some of your favorite characters in cartoons, it's their personality determines their placement. You look at people who've tried to move from, let's just say, I'm dating myself. You might not even know who this is. But remember this guy named Michael Landon? He was Pa on Little House on the Prairie. He couldn't play anything else. It was Pa. That's his personality. It determined his placement. You're going to be on the prairie forever, Pa. You think about some other people who've tried to get up. Jim Carrey's about one of the only ones who's able to make the leap from being, just goofy and actually had a halfway decent movie beyond being goofy. But for the most part, you try and do that, their personality just doesn't allow it. They're just in your face, overexpressing. Whatever your personality is going to determine where you serve. Don't try and be something you're not. Don't try and do something you shouldn't do. We should serve, fill this blank in, where you are most valued. Now, we've been throwing these bricks in, and there's like four of them in here somewhere. Justin gets to put the last one in next week. But have you ever heard of a keystone?
Yeah.
When they made an arch, there's that one that goes in the middle, it's like the keystone, and it holds the whole thing, all everything goes together on it. That's where they're most valued. That specific brick's purpose in life is built around its shape, its personality. Guys, find a spot where you're valued. And if we don't value you, you can, if it's your personality, say, hey, Pastor, you don't value me. And I'll apologize really fast. And if that's not your personality, you can find somebody else and say, hey, go tell Pastor he's a jerk, he doesn't value me. And then I'll apologize really fast. But you need to find a place where you're valued. And again, I go back to kids, because if you've ever worked with kids and that's your thing, and that's your personality, and you're just kind of down on their level, and I'm not saying you're immature, kids love you. I mean, that's the most fun. For me, I love kids. It's a good thing, because I've got a lot. But I love kids, because you can... All right, I'm going to open the window into my house a little bit. My personality is more of a permissive type. Yeah, whatever, let's do it. Claude suggested that we put the tables out for the service. instead of waiting until the Lord's Supper. I'm like, I don't know, I'm not thinking about that. I don't know if we'll have enough. But then he says, hey, but it's a little bit out of the box. I'm like, yeah, let's go. That's all you have to say. Because that's my personality. It's just do something different. And I'm permissive. Like my kids, if they want to do something, if you check my blog, you can see Tyler, he's my oldest one. He climbed 25 feet up into a tree, sat on a branch, took the book, and sat there reading. Cool, go for it, kid. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 4. She likes to catch frogs and lizards and stuff. She caught this toad while she was in her Snow White dress. It was beautiful. And she's like, it's like Princess and the Frog or whatever. And so, of course, I had to ask her if she'd kiss it. She licked it. I didn't ask her to lick it. I said, just kiss it. I've got another son, and I told him I was going to say this. You seen the little dude walking around here in a mohawk? Yeah, that's mine. That's mine. Why? Because he said, Dad, I want a mohawk. Okay, let's go. Aha, you want it. It's just kind of what I'm like. But when it comes to like discipline, I don't like that. Stop. Stop. Please stop. If you don't stop, your mom's going to have to spank you. The cool thing about kids is when I give them a spanking, because it is my job, it's not my wife, so I can't pass that up. And we do spank. We'll talk about that in our next series, The Living Room, which is coming up in a couple weeks. But we've explained to them what the standards are. Say, hey, if you do that one more time, you realize that you will get in trouble, right? As a matter of fact, my youngest daughter, her name is Hannah. She's a spitfire. Oh. She decided she wanted to play the piano. And people were sleeping. And that's about how it sounded. It was annoying. I said, Hannah, don't touch the piano. Bing! All right, what option do I have? You've got to deal with this. So I take her, and I give her a spanking, and the first thing she does, okay, that's when you've done discipline right, and that's when you find out that you're in a spot that fits your personality and your values. That's what I want you guys to have. Even when things go wrong, you need to be in a place where you can be valued. Your personality is going to determine that. So your personality is going to be influencing what? Other people's perception, how they relate to you, what they think about you, how they describe you to people when you're not there. It's going to influence your placement in the body where you serve. And last but not least, it's going to influence what? Your pleasure. Your pleasure. When you find that place where you're valued, where you can be who you were created to be. And any of you remember Richard Simmons? Some of you definitely do. The guy is a nut job. Okay? He's just freakazoid. But that is his personality, and he has found his spot, and he's never changed. He's still a freak. But he is happy as anything. Why? Because he found a spot where his personality could be used. Frankly, it has influenced other people's perception of him, has it not? Oh, yeah. I mean, who else is an overweight white dude wearing tighty whities for shorts? Oh, it's just wrong. It's influenced his placement. And I actually admit, when I was growing up, I actually watched him doing his, exercise show. Oh. Excuse me. But he's just happy because he found a spot where he can express who he is, and he doesn't have to try and hide it. And if you're sitting here and you're not happy, take a look at the edges of your shirt. Find out, do you have any rough edges that need to be filed down? Is your personality, are you developing it so that it will point other people to Christ? So that he can become greater and you can become less. Or are you distorting it and actually making it worse? Last blank here. You should serve where it's most enjoyable for you. Now, I could put a parenthetical statement, that's a $5 word for the day. I could put a little statement in here that says, you should serve regularly where it's most enjoyable for you, because there's going to be some out of you who will actually use this against me. When I ask you if you can help out with something, you're like, no, I don't enjoy that. But you should serve regularly. I'm thinking Dusty, he likes speaking. Do you like speaking, Dusty? Yeah. It's kind of in his personality. Now, God bless you, brother. But Dusty's personality is a little different off stage, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to say it's a bad thing, but when Dusty gets up here, it's like the Incredible Hulk. And he just busts out of his shell, and I mean, he's like, wham! But then Dusty goes and sits down, and he's kind of quiet. It's like pulling teeth to get him to tell you his middle name. Which you'll have to ask him about, by the way. Because I don't know what it is. But I want you to find a place where your personality fits in this place, where you can serve and make God bigger. Why? Because man looks at the outward appearance. And if we want to make a difference in this world, we need to develop our personality so that we can be attractive and not pushing people away. We're in a political season. Some of you have looked and seen some of the candidates. You know what their personality is like. You're like, I will absolutely not vote for them. He, she is a don't blank. And sometimes it's not even because of what they believe in or what they want to do. Because of their personality. Some of you have preachers. Some of you have brothers or sisters or moms or dads or grandmas or grandpas that are the personality. You got the weird uncle. You got the strange stepmother. You got the wandering sister. They're not happy because they haven't found their faith. So personality may be defined by God. But you can either develop it or distort it, and I'm going to encourage you to develop it. Get rid of the stuff that is unsuitable or unnecessary. Uncover the things that are unseen. Who you are. And use it in a way that makes God bigger. I'm going to pray. We're going to do something here. Not a whole lot different, except for the fact that you're at tables. But if you've got questions, and again, if you haven't filled out your card, do that, please. Everybody, not just first timers. We have everybody fill them out. That's how we keep track of you. That's how we know what's going on in your life. That's how we know what to pray for. And the cool thing is, we're getting up to around 2 full pages of prayer requests every week because you guys are sharing with us what's going on in your life. And we appreciate that. And God's doing something, like my wife was saying earlier. God answers these prayers. That is the coolest thing. If you guys want to hear how God is taking care of some things, come tonight to the Lord's Supper. And we got something we'll share with you, as well as some chicken and food that you guys are going to bring. We'll share with each other. But fill out the card. If you've got questions, write them on the back of the card. If you've got prayer requests, write them on the back of the card. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to take up the offering. And the offering is for people that are regular attenders here. You don't give it to me. You give it to God. Okay? And you shouldn't be giving as leftovers. We've talked about that before. You should be giving your first fruit. If you're a guest with us, just put in your card. And then one last thing. Talking about Brad, who's going overseas. Or actually not overseas. It's almost like it because he's going to New York. Other people we know going to Kenya. People we know that are going to Daytona Beach. If you feel like you want to help them do that and accomplish that, use their personality, whatever area they're going, you can use your envelope and mark it as missions, and we'll make sure that it gets to them and divide that among them. Let me pray for you guys. I feel like some of you are really struggling with this. Like you're just afraid to be who God is giving you the freedom to be because you think it just doesn't fit. You would never run around with a mohawk like my kid. But God probably hasn't called you to have a mohawk. Some of you are just afraid. I want you to step out of your comfort zone. Be done with the un. Instead of being uncomfortable, get comfortable. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I thank you that you have given each one of us a unique shape. Father, those of us who have chosen to follow Jesus Christ, you've given us a spiritual gift. All of us have a heart for something. We have abilities. We have a personality. God, I pray that the people who are here, that we collectively as a group, Lord, would allow you to shine through our personality, that we would develop it, that we wouldn't distort it. God, that we would bless you by who we are, and we would draw other people to you. Father, I thank you for loving us more than many of us love ourselves. I pray that you bring us up to your level instead of us trying to bring you down that way. In Jesus' name. Amen.